that's Daniel Dubois getting what can only be described as it's not the only way, but it can be described as a redemptive victory over Filip Hrgovic. Just confounding a lot of the doubters, probably proving a few things to himself as well. It's an interesting one. So I was speaking to Eamon about this off camera before we started. And when I watched it on Saturday night, it felt very much like Dubois was on the brink. He was getting pinged all about the place by Hrgovic and then really showed some mettle to pull it back. Now, I'm not saying he didn't show mettle, but I rewatched it today in the cold light of day this afternoon. I happened to just switch on the TV about 2 o'clock this afternoon because, I don't work full time apparently. And instead of Countdown or whatever else students watch during the day, it still had the TNT channel on from the other night. And we'll get onto a bit of TNT criticism later. But so the fight had literally just started. So I sat down and watched the whole thing once again. And Dubois was very competitive, even in the early rounds when I think I had him 3-2 down and then maybe 4-3 down after 7, something like that. But he was always in the fight. He was always kind of breaking Hrgovic down. He was targeting the body a lot more than his opponent was. And he always seemed in it. He never seemed discouraged. And I just think because of the drama and the narrative that follows Dubois around after the Joe Joyce fight, I think I had thought he was in more trouble than he actually was. And they certainly didn't seem to be panicking in the corner either. I mean, his dad was particularly animated running around the ring, but I don't think they were worried or concerned for Dubois. So we've got some more punch stats from Jabba. Again, if you could put those up for us, that'd be great. It kind of tells the story of the fight. A lot busier heavyweight fight than the one that would follow it, thankfully. Maybe one of the better fights of the night as well. Hrgovic actually landed more shots. But I would say that a lot of Hrgovic's shots, while accurate, didn't carry the same weight necessarily as Dubois', which were the more telling blows. As you can see, they're high impact. Dubois got the edge, which doesn't surprise me at all. They threw a very similar amount, which I guess means Dubois was missing a lot. Although I thought Dubois' head movement was much improved in this fight. I saw elements of the kind of bobbing and weaving that we've come to associate with Don's trainer, Don Charles' most celebrated charge, Derek Chisora. I think Hrgovic started well. He seemed to be kind of coasting to an extent. The better technical boxer, it seemed, early on. But as soon as Dubois kind of got a bit between his teeth, round 2, I think he landed that big right hand over the top that split open Hrgovic's eye for the first time. And I think once he knew that he could land and he could hurt him significantly, I don't think there was any looking back at that point. And I think Dubois fought like someone with the mentality that he knew he would get to him in the end. And so it proved that he came out for the penultimate round and just really put it on Hrgovic. It was his best round of the fight so far. I think it was the 7th. Backed him to the ropes, unloaded shots. Some of them were kind of winging wild shots. They didn't all land cleanly. But because Dubois had his chin tucked with that bobbing and weaving style and he was coming forward as he threw the shots as well, he'd often land with his head as kind of an extra glove. Not intentionally, but it's it's war in there, isn't it? And Dubois just seemed ecstatic at the end to have come through what he considered a war. He mentally seemed so switched on. And they said to him in the corner, I think it was after the first round, throw a double jab and then a right hand. The commentators kept talking about it as well. And Don Charles was very vocal in saying, you don't need to land the jabs. You're throwing a double jab to get you in range, to get your feet in range to land the right hand at the end of it. And that proved incredibly effective as the fight wore on, as did the body shots. Eamon, what did you make of how the fight kind of twisted and turned?
Yeah, look, I kind of agree with you, as I didn't quite see as much of the jeopardy as maybe it was perceived to be in that first viewing. And like you said, and I'll be direct in my response here, a lot of it is to do with a lot of people throwing around the quitter word and thinking that Dubois, for want of a better phrase, would jack it as soon as he would receive a big shot from Filip Hrgovic. I've had these conversations with people within the industry, and they seem to just think like Dubois is just a topside fighter. The momentum's going his way, he's happy, but as soon as he gets one back, he won't want to know, and that'll be his undoing. Well, he's really proved that wrong now, and I think anyone who's holding the sentiment that he's a quitter, anyone's holding the sentiment that he'll jack it when he gets under pressure, I think you've got to really take that away. I get and understand what happened in Joy's fight. I get and understand that people will say he got knocked out for it by a jab and didn't want anything to do anymore with the Usyk fight. But in these tough get-going moments against Jarrell Miller and now against Filip Hrgovic, I think he's really proven his heart and his mettle here. And he is still some of those things. He is still very much a momentum fighter. You have to stop and stifle his momentum. Otherwise, it's the train coming through without anything stopping him. And Filip Hrgovic really showed no real nous there, despite his experience as well, too, to stop and hold and jab away at Daniel, to really kind of just stop what was happening on. He didn't do it. I thought Dubois, although this won't be shown and is said about Dubois as much, but I think it's more of a game plan, but Dubois still had to execute it. And this is coming from a Don Charles side of things. But I think he showed intelligence as well, too, to like Bob and Weaver, as you were saying, to notice and understand that he was the shorter man, so he could get under Filip Hrgovic more to do what he loves doing best, is not being a defensive fighter or defensively sound as much. And he did take some big shots, but being knowing what he is and being a fighter who just wants to throw hooks, just wants to throw to the head to knock out his opponent. And he got there. He got his just desserts. He got what he wanted to, and it showed real mettle to do that. I thought it was really impressive in an offensive way for Daniel Dubois. Now, whether that will be something that's be just as fruitful in his next few fights, especially with what's on the line next, I'm not so sure. There's a lot to be arrested here, especially with some of the conversations surrounding Stan Dubois and his presence in the corner. Now, there's a conversation going on online as to what his role is, and naturally, his role is Daniel Dubois' father. But I also think, kind of in these moments, Stan Dubois is needed because he does see himself looking over in the corner to Stan. Sorry, his dad, I should say, in this sentence. He does seem, looking for those instructions. Whilst Don Charles is his lead trainer, I do feel that Dubois' success is really kind of paramount on being able to hear his father and know that his father's there giving him his instruction and knows his son. I think he draws confidence from that, as well as listening to Don Charles too. I can't actually remember, I don't know if you can, Danny, of Stan being such a visible presence in Shane McGuigan's corners. No. So I think that's...
Or in Shane McGuigan's gym.
Yeah, so that's clearly been a change there. And that's naturally come from Stan, and that's naturally been accepted by Don and Daniel, and it's working. So do you accept the chaos there? I think while it works, you do accept the chaos. Maybe you try and temper it a little bit more, and have Don's voice a little bit more prominent. But when a fighter is so in tune with his father, like the case is here, and looks like he needs his father in the corner, and it's bearing the fruit of success right now, it's just about working. So I think he's needed there.
His name's Stan. He's his son's #1 fan. His tea's gone cold. He's wondering why, etc., etc. Yeah, I mean, from what they were saying on the TNT commentary, Frank Warren at ringside was encouraging Stan/Dave Dubois, whichever name you prefer, to get more involved in the corner. So they obviously do feel it's working. It certainly worked against Hrgovic. But we weren't the only interested observers, and we certainly didn't have as much of a stake in the fight as someone else who was watching from ringside next to the promoters, Eddie and Frank, which must have been interesting for him anyway. Vinny, if you've got that picture, courtesy of Mark Robinson at Matchroom, this is Anthony Joshua watching ringside during the Dubois-Hrgovic fight. Absolutely fixed on what's going on in the ring, despite Eddie Hearn's, adoring glance, efforts to distract him, bit of both. What we'd like from you guys as well, before we get on to talking about a potential Dubois-AJ fight, if you can caption this picture for us, what is Eddie Hearn saying to AJ here, and obviously being completely ignored? But what is he saying? Let us know in the comments. We'll read out some of the best ones. Get your funny hats on, guys. But yeah, Dubois, so it was seen before the fight as a potential box-off, if you like, to face AJ for the IBF title. Until Filip Hrgovic until Oleg's mention after the hard fight with Tyson Fury, which has got about another 2 or 3 weeks to go, we won't know what the IBF decide. That apparently, according to Frank Warren, they can't strip him of the IBF belt until then. But he is obliged to fight the IBF #1 next, and that's what we've been told, albeit that was Hrgovic until he lost. So does that change the goalpost somewhat? Because I'm sure that Usyk, Fury, and the teams would like the rematch to be for undisputed once again. But if not, Dubois secured the IBF interim crown last night with the win over Hrgovic. Could he be upgraded before a potential fight with Joshua at Wembley on the 21st of September. I think it's the 21st, possibly. Or could they fight for the vacant IBF world title, the first world heavyweight title that Anthony Joshua won, of course, against Charles Martin? And I would hope that he would get a sterner test from his compatriot in Daniel Dubois than he did against the mercurial southpaw. Eamon, before we talk about the fight itself, how likely do you think it is that we see Dubois in the opposite corner to AJ on that big show at Wembley in September?
Firstly, I just want to comment here, actually. Daniel Dubois can count himself really unlucky, and Don should be really frustrated as well too, as should be Daniel and the team, that he isn't actually IBF full heavyweight champion. We know he won the WBA regular belt, which for some is, a version of the belt, and it's the true belt, but the WBA Super was recognized as the true belt at the time, but he won the regular, whatever, putting that to a side. But black letter of the IBF regulations, as they did with Fury, they stripped him pretty much straight away after he beat Klitschko. Can Daniel Dubois count himself really lucky to not be heavyweight champion right now? I think he can. He's interim, has to settle that for now, and that next fight will maybe see him beat a contest for the true heavyweight title, which is a bit of a look. I as well too, I'll admit, I'd rather look to see the Fury versus Usyk fight being a full undisputed rematch. But again, like I said there, just being true to the word, Daniel Dubois should be really frustrated that he isn't full champion right now. But to answer your question, how likely would it be for Dubois and AJ to trade leather in Wembley later this year? I think it's really likely, considering as well too that I think with Wilder being the favoured fighter of the equation between Wilder and Zhang, wanting to build him back up, he didn't meet the bar there, and Zhang won. They wanted the Wilder fight. That's the truth of it. But they've not got that now. Zhang, he's been kind of a contender. He's been kind of one of those who's been like 5th or 6th on the list when Eddie Hearn's mentioned potential opponents for Anthony Joshua in the past. And I think that's about the place where he is right now as well too. With that, well, he would be second, I guess, right now because he's just had that. But in terms of actual real want to fight him, I don't think he ranks really highly at all. Plus, it's a fight we've seen before. Seen him fight in the amateurs as well too, most famously. And Joshua looked really good in that fight. I don't really have the want to see it again. I think what they're doing to satiate Zhang's want to be in that fight is they're going to give him the homecoming fight. I think that's the trade-off here. You don't get Joshua, but we'll give you your home fight in China. And that's what they'll look to do to satisfy Zhang there. So therefore, Dubois comes into the mix. And Dubois and Joe Parker have really earned their opportunity to have a big fight, and that big fight to be Anthony Joshua. I'd like to see, because they've made the mix of, and it was said that one of these two fighters, whoever performs the best, will get the fight against AJ. I think it should be Dubois. That all-British clash, the bit of history to it, because Dubois, as I've mentioned in previous weeks on SO Live, if you've been listening across all platforms, including Spotify, I mentioned that Dubois, when Dubois first started, when he first turned pro, maybe just a little bit before, in about that time, one of Dubois' real claim to fame was that he knocked out Anthony Joshua. So there's a bit of history between the two. He's now one of the new rising heavyweights. He's got him back onto that pedestal. So he's got to dethrone the long-standing number one in the UK, alongside, of course, Tyson Fury. He's got a lot to say about that, but he's got other fish to fry, bigger fish to fry in all due respect. So why doesn't AJ touch that next generation, as is said when we've talked about legacies, and fight Daniel Dubois? I think it'd be a great fight, one that he'll fancy, rightfully. Anthony Joshua should be the favourite in that fight, but it's a Matchroom versus Queensbury rematch card that's mooted, and that seems like the perfect natural fit for that card.
It's interesting.